so much for joining us for the Q&A for Shorts Program 4. Let me introduce you to our filmmakers. We have with us today Zahida Pirani, the writer-director of El Carrito, Claudrena Harold, one of the directors and editors of Pride, Nash Edgerton, the director and one of the stars of Shark, Stephanie Camacho, director of Mano Santa, Eliane Esther Botts, director of Inflow of Words, and Siyou, writer and director of Strawberry Cheesecake. Thanks so much for joining us. To break everyone in, here's a first question for all of you. How did your projects come to be? What was the initial spark and motivation? And how were you able to bring your film to life? Zahida, maybe we can start with you and your experience as a community organizer and the inspiration behind El Carrito.
Yeah, sure. So El Carrito actually comes out of my experience as being a community organizer in Queens in New York City. And I worked with a lot of low-wage immigrant workers. And so that's sort of where this story comes from. It's also my community where I've lived and worked for about 18 years. The story is about an untrusting street vendor who eventually sort of opens her mind and takes a leap of faith. And so that's something I think I see very often in my community here and in my work, that it's really about bringing people together and connecting as people. And so I also had done a documentary film called Judith, Portrait of a Street Vendor. So Judith in the documentary is another inspiration for the character of Nellie in El Carrito.
Awesome, thank you so much. And Claudrena, your film is a hybrid of sorts as it's based on reality, but takes place in the 90s. I'd love to hear more about Pride's motivation and journey. Oh, you're muted.
Sure. So since 2013, I've been working on these films with Kevin Everson, who also co-directed the film on the experiences of African Americans at the University of Virginia, and the ways in which these students created institutions, whether it be Black Studies or a magazine. And so in 1975, they created a magazine called Pride. And I think we were always just fascinated with the story of students with very little resources besides themselves, trying to create this magazine that would address issues of culture and politics and religion and just what it was like to be a student. And the 1990s are kind of, you sort of considered the golden age, not just in maybe hip hop, but the golden age in terms of Black student life at the University of Virginia. That's when Black enrollment was the highest. And so we wanted to sort of capture Black students creating this sort of mouthpiece. And that we finally got a chance to do that with Pride, and to also have a film where we would show them in the process of making art, coming up with a really in some ways almost an institution, but also building community in the process. And Pride no longer exists. And so on the occasion of its 45th anniversary, the 45th anniversary of its founding, we thought it'd be good to sort of reflect on that. And we were also influenced in some ways, I think, by the depth of Toni Morrison. And we found this interview where she was talking about the power that she derived from writing. And so that was a big inspiration in some ways for the narrative of the film and also the narrative arc of the film.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And Nash, you've played this character Jack before in other shorts you've made, this time Married to Rose Byrne. I'd love to hear more about the inception of Shark and how it builds off your previous work.
Well, yeah, I played the character Jack in Spider and Bear, and in both those films, the character is in relationships where there's like a miscommunication of humor, where the girls he is dating just don't get him, and it kind of goes badly because of it. And and I thought it would be interesting to see what would happen if he met a girl that was equally into pranking people as he was, and what would happen in their relationship if he met someone that was his match and maybe even better than his match, and that was sort of the crux of getting into the story of that.
But things never turn out right for him, it seems.
Well, yeah, he's a well-meaning, immature, practical joker, you know.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. And Stephanie, what inspired Mano Santa and motivated you to bring the narrative of Pablo and his grandfather to life?
Hello, yes. So this story was written by Raul Samra, and he wasn't inspired where he grew up. He grew up in El Campo, in the rural zone of Puerto Rico. And in his town, they had what is called a Mano Santa. And he was inspired by that figure. And he wanted to imagine what the grandfather and what this role of being this man of the house could be represented in a more sensible way. We're talking about sensibility in masculinity. So we see that they have this beautiful relationship where they can talk and they can express with their looks and with this little things that shows that they care for each other. So it's imagining this sensibility in the masculinities.
That's great. Yeah, you really get that sense of their love for one another. And Eliana, your experimental documentary is so complex and becomes very intimate with the three subjects as they open up about the emotional experience of interpreting. I'd love to hear more about the motivation behind Inflow of Words.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I met Alma, one of the interpreters, at a festival here in The Hague, and we just started chatting, and then she told me how she worked as an interpreter. And the more I learned about her and about her position as an interpreter, the more I got intrigued and also shocked in a way by her experiences and the fact that she was never heard. She was always talking as an interpreter, always using her voice, but never to tell her own story. And I think that's also my motivation for the film, that I wanted to give her the possibility to share her experiences, no longer being just a channel for other people's experiences, but yeah, having the possibility to express her own narrative, just like the other two interpreters in the film. And I think that their testimonies are incredible, and they are incredible people who have always been in between, and now they are kind of on the stage. So that's my motivation for the film. Yes.
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much. And Siyou, I'm very curious as to what inspired and motivated the angsty rebellion of your three main characters in Strawberry Cheesecake.
I would say that it's kind of from my personal experiences. I mean, I grew up in Singapore, and I always felt that I was in a school, and also the school and the society can feel very authoritarian. It's very controlled. And I always felt that as a teenager growing up, I was quite rebellious, and I didn't know why. I was just kind of angry, and I felt that I had no voice or any agency. I just had to do what my parents or my teachers or the society wanted me to do. And so I've been writing my first feature kind of about this time of being a teenager in an all-girls school. And so last year I got a chance to do this short, and for some crazy reason, I decided to do it as a horror film, even though I'm terrified of horror films and I've never done anything genre before. But I think it's also partly to do with 2020 and how crazy it was. And I thought if I could never make a film again, why not try something crazy? And so I think in the horror film process, I kind of learned that you have to tap into your fears, and I dug pretty deep, and I realized this whole time a lot of my fears had to do with like authority. And something I learned in genre is like you kind of push things to an extreme. And I thought I could take this feeling of kind of not having a voice and not being a person, just being one of many people, take it to extreme where these girls sort of like represent their own deaths to their oppressor. And that was the Angst channel.
Yes, it's great. I love the three main characters. They're great. Thank you so much for that, everyone. Moving on to question 2, all of you have previous experience making short films. I'm wondering if there were any particular challenges making this project, or conversely, were there any magical alignments that happened on set or even afterwards? And also, how has the age of COVID affected your filmmaking practice? So Eliana, how about we start with you?
Oh, it's an interesting question. I mean, so much has happened over the last year, but I think it was a complex film to make, as you mentioned in the introduction. It is visually and in content, I think, a complex film. But a lot of times I was very much supported and helped by the interpreters. For example, one of the interpreters told me in our conversations, if I would make a film about myself, I would be the voiceover. And then I realized, okay, he should be the voiceover of the film. So many of the choices I made are actually driven by things that the interpreter said or did. So they've been really, really helpful in making this film, not only as subjects, but really as inspirations and input for steps I could take. Yes.
You really get that sense of the visual representation of their inner turmoil through your film.
Yes.
Really well done. And Siyou, how about for you?
Challenges, yeah, for sure. COVID was a big challenge. Partly because the interesting thing is that it kept everybody in Singapore. And so when I was casting, I thought maybe like 5 people would, show up, but then it was like 100 girls because everyone was bored and stuck at home. So I think there was an outlet they wanted to express themselves. But the problem, I think a big problem was finding a location because of COVID. And so we kind of had to shoot around this other production, and we shot in this school when there was no electricity, and we shot on a roof and there were no barriers, so it was a little scary. I thought someone was gonna die, but it's all good.
Would have matched the vibe of the film.
Exactly.
And Stephanie, how about you for Mano Santa?
Yes, so the challenge was that we had to film in 2 days. The magical thing that happened is that the song at the end was actually sung from one of my friends and his grandpa. So it was really, really, really beautiful seeing also not only Pablo and Don Isidoro on screen, if not that also the ending song was made by an actual friend of mine and his grandpa.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you so much. And Nash, any challenges, magical things? How's COVID affected your filmmaking?
Yeah, or when I was making the film, like one of the biggest challenges was shooting in the water. I hadn't really done that before, and because I was performing in the film and in the water myself a lot, that was quite a challenge. And but even just getting to that location, because I needed to shoot on an island because of COVID and lockdown, like it was very hard to travel in Australia. And originally I'd scouted locations up north, and but then I couldn't get across the border to shoot there. And then so I had to then start trying to find somewhere within my own state that was off the coast. And there was an island, but it was also shut down. And then and I had my cast, and I was starting to lose people. And at the last minute, this island opened up, and we managed to get there. And we did it with a very small crew because we were mostly on a boat. And the one other challenge was the wedding, as seen at a wedding, and because of COVID, we had to have as many people who knew each other, who were like, say, all the guests were sort of family members, or they're in groups of people who were in the same household. So yeah, it had challenges, and but somehow we got through it. And the most fun part of the wedding was the prank that happens at the wedding is based on basically what my wife did to me at our wedding.
Really? That was so funny.
Yeah.
Watch it if you haven't seen it. Awesome. Thank you, Nash. And Claudrena, how about for you and Pride?
Yeah, I think the challenge is always just balancing making a film and the regular 9 to 5 of like teaching. And so we always work with a crew of students, and the actors are always students. So it's a matter of me balancing my schedule with Kevin's schedule and all of the students. And so we shot over a 2 to 3 day period. And I also think it's interesting working with students because we live in an iPhone era. And so we shoot everything on film. And so they're also sometimes not quite prepared for that kind of timely process of just setting up everything. But we think it's good, pedagogy. So just that 2 days, it's a grind. And then post COVID, so we shot actually in late 2019, in November of 2019. But we were not able to edit until 2021, just because of travel, but also just because of, I think, the ways in which this pandemic has forced us to just slow down and really think about things and to ensure that we model good safety habits too. So, to be perfectly honest with you as well. So making sure it was a safe time for us to even go into a space and edit together. And that didn't happen until really this year.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Claudrena. And Zahida, how about for you?
Well, our magical alignment happened because we wrapped just 2 days before everything shut down in New York City because of COVID. So, the stars were aligned for us and we got to shoot the film. And then when we were in quarantine, that's when the post-production process started and I started editing the film. So I think we got really lucky, I have to say. And I'm very grateful for that. And I would say one of the challenges, although I think it was actually an opportunity, was I brought together people and gave leadership positions on crew to people who actually are from the community. So for example, my production designer has never worked as a production designer. She's a friend of mine. She's always had a good eye, but she also works for a street vendor organization here in New York City. And I took a risk and I had her, do a lot of the artistic design. And she also came up with ideas for hair and makeup. And I think she did a fabulous job, having never really been on a set before. And I had a producer, also a co-producer, who was a community organizer and just did some amazing things that I think, when those of us who are trained in production and have been on set just don't have that beginner's mind, I think, to like tap into those creative elements or think outside the box. And so it was cool because, there's a scene in the film where we needed a lot of extras who were surrounding Nellie, the street vendor, when she's having a very successful day, and it needed to look like a large crowd. And we didn't have any extras, background actors. And the producer, who's a community organizer, was like, we should just sell the tacos for $1 in the plaza and everybody will come. And people did. They came in droves. So we actually didn't need background actors. We had them in the community. And I think that kind of thinking was amazing, bringing people in. And I think also, it just conveys a sense of like realism in the film because we had those elements.
Definitely. And bringing in people who actually have the experience of the community. That's wonderful. And as a final question to everyone, I'd love to know what's next for you all. What do you have brewing and where are you brewing it? Where are you currently based? So how about we start with Claudrena?
Yeah, so in November, we're going to shoot a short film called Gospel Hill. And it's going to be based on like the experiences of hospital workers. And at the same time, it's informed by the Richard Pryor film, The Mac. But there's a part in that film where the two workers are just really casually, and it's all about like sort of casual experiences where, they're in this bar and they're just having a conversation. And so it's going to be a short film about two hospital workers having a conversation about what it means to work, what it means to labor, and just kind of their interaction also with students. And so, yeah, we're shooting that in Charlottesville in a month. So I need to start working on pre-production. Some things I'm a little behind, but I'm really looking forward to that. And the term, Gospel Hill was an African-American neighborhood that the University Hospital is now built on. And so it's also a displaced African-American community. So that's where we came up with the name Gospel Hill.
Wonderful. Well, we can't wait to see it. And Nash, how about you?
Yeah, I'm developing various things. I've shot a little bit of television, so I'm working on a project with my brother that's television, and then I've been writing a script myself for which I hope to get the opportunity to make sometime in the near future.
Awesome. And Zahida, what's next for you?
Well, I am writing the script for my next short film called Ahmad, and I'm also going to shoot it here in Queens, in New York City. And it's about two Bangladeshi immigrants who are friends, and they work in the livery cab industry. And it explores some of the same themes as El Carrito, sort of subverting the American dream and turning it on its head, and really looking at how can you stay true to humanistic values in a culture that doesn't always prioritize those values. So I'm planning on shooting that in September of next year.
And that's a feature?
It's going to be another short, but I plan on turning it into a feature. So thanks for that plug, Julia.
You're welcome. Awesome. Well, we love to see that as well. And Stephanie, what's next for you?
Well, right now, for my projects, I'm kind of a hold because I'm doing a master's degree that is taking most of my time. But I recently worked as an assistant director from a friend of mine that right now is in the edition phase, and it's about our internal fights and fears.
Wonderful. Well, congrats on being in school, and can't wait to see that as well. Eliane, how about yourself?
Well, I'm actually still on maternity leave, so enjoying my new family. And meanwhile, I'm editing a film which I shot a few years ago, but I never edited, and I felt it was a good moment for this kind of more laid back work while being also a little bit at home. And it's about a family in Warsaw who fled the war from Chechnya, and they're friends of mine, and I felt this is a good way to finish the film. And I'm also working on a publication which is called Narrating Conflict, and it's based on 3 films of mine, because I feel that as a filmmaker, it's always a pity that a lot of narratives stay in the archive and are not put on screen. So this publication gives me the possibility to really share the whole narrative that someone is telling instead of just the bits and pieces. So I hope to finish that in a few months.
Yeah. Awesome. Will that be online or physical?
It will be printed publication, yes.
Awesome, and congrats on being a mother.
Thanks.
And Siyou, what about yourself? What's upcoming for you?
Yeah, I'm still rewriting my feature project called Amoeba. Yeah, it's about like rebellious teenage girls in Singapore, and yeah, that's going up and down. But I'm also shooting a spec this weekend because I guess I'm trying to become a working director.
Yes, as you should, as you will. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. We've come to the end of the Q&A. Thanks for being here today. To our audience, please tell your friends to watch all of our shorts programs. They're available to screen throughout the festival. And please visit our website at fest.afi.com for opportunities to further engage with us. We'd love to hear from you on social media using #AFIFest. And thank you. Bye.